but you feel so left out simply because you are not able to openly communicate with other people around. Okay, let's not go that far. Imagine a child who is not able to express his or her emotions or be around his siblings and friends and enjoy the life like normally they are doing. That sounds pretty scary. But what if I tell you, millions and billions of people globally are facing the problem and they are being left out just because they are differently able or they have got some disability in them. So, hi everyone, my name is Jatin Bhusal. I will go to the introduction later on. But today I'll be talking to you on a very different and rarely spoken topic. That is the AI for differently abled, present and possibilities. Talking about myself, I am a research assistant at NAAMII, which is not to be confused with NAAMII College. It's Nepal Applied Mathematics and Informatics Institute for Research, one of the most pioneering AI research lab in Nepal. Followed by that, I am also the founder and CEO at Eastern Nepal, which is one of the soft skills training and talent development institute of Nepal. And gradually, I am also the Huawei Seats for the Future Global Ambassador for the year 2023 and 2024, and I am an SQS certified soft skills trainer. So talking about the general overview of my talk today, I have divided my talk into the three parts vaguely. The first one will be the three prerequisites of establishing an innovative industry, followed by the challenges that we're facing in this domain, and then after that I'll be sharing what's possible and my research on Nepali Sign Language interpretation. Okay, let's begin. So, I will not be going into the much technical details on AI and all this stuff because most of you are already experienced. I can see my seniors here who have been working on this field for so long. So I'll be talking about a different kind of industry and innovation of how we can enter into the differently abled community, or how we can make the life of differently abled communities better. So to establish any industry or to enter into a market, there are three prerequisites that need to be fulfilled. The first one would be the people. Whether on how big the problem is, how many people are impacted, or how bad the situation is. The second one would be the impact. There is a general misconception that having a large people means there will be a large impact, but that might not be the case, which we'll be sharing gradually. And finally, I'll be sharing about the industry, the industrial part, or how stable the industry is already, so that the newcomers can enter into that problem or can establish as a player into that industry. So let's talk about the people. So generally, there are nearly 13.8 billion people who are differently able or have some disability in the world, which is estimated to extend to nearly 16% by the year 2030. That is, 1 out of 6 of us globally have got some disability, or we are not physically, or we're differently abled, let's say that. Nearly, and in context of Nepal, 2.2% of the population are differently able, in which 2.5% of the total male population are included, and the 2.0% of the female population. So that's a big number considering the total population and demography of Nepal. Now, this is a very brief data of the percentages of the disabilities, what kind of disability the Nepalese population are facing. There are nearly 36.75% of people who are going on physical challenges. That could be 16.88% for low vision, 5.3% for blind, 7.85% is for deaf, 7.87% of hard for hearing, 1.56% for both deaf and blind, 6.36% for speech impairment, 4.2% of psychosocial disability, and so on. So talking about this population, now I'll be specifically focusing on hearing and speaking impaired because that's the industry which I'm exploring right now. So nearly 120,000 people in Nepal are hearing and speaking impaired, according to the data by National Deaf Federation in the year 2022. There are 22 special schools for such children, so 174 integrated schools, 6,380 students are hearing impaired, and 204 students are deaf and blind. And in the global scenario, nearly 400 million plus people are undergoing this problem. So you see, the disability problem is not just some that should be excluded as a small community. This is a really big population, and this is a really big problem that needs to be tackled. And I think AI can be a really pioneering tool, a really pioneering platform who can actually help to make these people's life better. Now let's talk about the impact. I mentioned previously, not necessarily that if the people are high, then the impact of the solution are also high. But in this case, nearly like some differently able people die 20 years earlier than the people who are than other normal people, have twice the risk of developing conditions such as depression, asthma, diabetes, stroke, obesity, and poor oral health. Finding accessible transportation is nearly 15 times tougher. But even in this scenario, like finding the public transport in case of Kathmandu, it's really hard for the people who are differently able, who cannot speak or who cannot generally travel, have some physical disability. Very few hearing and speaking impaired students graduate and pursue higher educations. So during my starting for the research to develop an aid for the hearing and speaking impaired, I visited some of the schools in Kathmandu Valley, Bhaktapur, and Banepa. And when I discussed with the people around there, I found out that most of the students are not able to even graduate after grade 9. And it's not because they don't have the potential. They are really brilliant, but simply they have to be stagnant because the communication gap is so high. They are not able to understand. They are not able to communicate. There is a separate community of the people for deaf and for hearing and speaking impaired. And they are not easily comfortable to interact with the general community, and it goes vice versa. Alongside that, there are health inequalities, there are many lost opportunities, and there's societal discrimination. So aren't this problem impactful enough for us to enter into the industry? I believe so. Now let's talk about the AI for differently abled. Now I talked about how many people are there, how many population is facing, what kind of impact we can make by entering into this industry. Now let's talk about the existing AI industry, or how the global world is fighting to this problem in an entrepreneurial manner. So it is estimated that in the year 2022, $48.68 billion industry is currently existing in the for developing aids for differently able people, which is estimated to extend to $86.91 billion. Mostly the two technologies of AI, the two applications of AI, I'll rather say, the speech recognition and computer vision. These are mostly applied while developing aids for the hearing and speaking impaired. Here's a video of, there was a CES conference a few years back in the year 2022 in which they developed really interesting AI aids for the people. Let me just play the video so that we can be more clear.
This is CES. This year, there's been a ton of innovation in the accessibility space. We're going to look at some of the devices made to assist with mobility, hearing, and communication difficulties. Let's get into it. First up is Skuo. It's an electric wheelchair that can climb stairs. Check this out. This is wild. It's built with sensors that constantly measure the ground and is supposed to recognize obstacles and changes, such as the end of a staircase. Its creators hope it'll help people move around more efficiently and wants to bring the device to the US. Also to help with mobility, L'Oreal created Hapta. It's a smart makeup applicator for users with limited hand and arm mobility.
1 in 10 people in the United States have some type of movement disorder that doesn't allow them to do basic functions. So a lot of people that today could not apply lipstick on their own can now do something very simple that can bring a lot of confidence into their life by using this kind of product.
Next up, hearing. These glasses can show what's being said out loud to me. The hope is that live captions can help people living with hearing loss. But how does it work?
So the glasses have microphones built in, noise-canceling microphones, and they're listening. And the microphones are capturing the audio that I'm saying, converting that audio into text right in the glasses, and then just rendering it on the glasses.
I can still see everything around me very clearly, but when I need the text, when I need to understand what someone said, the words are there for me. So that's really cool. Jabra also has an innovative solution for people with hearing loss. Its over-the-counter hearing aids let you make calls and play music. Finally, there are gadgets to help with communication issues. Wisp is one of the most interesting ones I saw. It's designed to amplify the voices of people who stutter and those with vocal disorders.
I stutter myself, and I suffered from that from childhood, and especially at high school. And that's why I started my company, WISP. Speech technology is meant for people who stutter severely, people who lost their voice.
So I'm about to whisper into this thing, and Wisp's AI will convert that into a natural sounding voice, complete with intonations, and yeah, we'll see how it works. I'm here at CES to test and see how this stuff works. I bet you can understand what I'm saying. I whispered so low that I could barely even hear it, but the algorithm was able to bring my voice back, somewhat.
I'm here at CES to test and see how this stuff works. I bet you can't understand what I'm saying.
That is wild. One of the most exciting things about CES is seeing how entrepreneurs solve problems for people who are often overlooked. For some with the most debilitating disabilities, there might be so much more in the future to help. While all these gadgets might not make it to the mass market, they force you to imagine a world where we can all do all the things we need to do.
Yeah. So you see, the world is actually moving on to it as an industry. That was a really interesting example of CES conference. You can watch online. There are plenty of lot of videos of each and every tech that they have just mentioned, explained individually. Aside from that, these are some pretty popular companies that have been working globally and some in the South Asian markets to solve this problem. For example, Lumen and Nurcam, they are working for the people with hearing impaired. There are some other companies like Kurage and Georgia Kurage, which is working actually for the mobilization. The Georgia Tech Center for Musical Technology is developing a prosthetic arm that connects with your body and helps you to play music and all kinds of instructions just based on what kind of message that you want to send. Then we have got Huawei, we have got the SoundEye, and there are multiple other companies that are actually working, and they are not only solving the problem, but they are also sustaining as an industry, as a company. So there is also impact and there is also money. So that's the industry I think we can explore on. But if you talk about the context of Nepal and in South Asian in general, the number of industry is equal to 0. In Nepal, I don't think I've ever heard of any such industry or company that is actually working on and making the profits. But it's a big problem, right? There's so many people in Nepal which are actually suffering the problem. And it's not just about being in Nepal. Like, we can be here in Nepal and we can actually create the quality or standard of the product that can be exported globally. For example, the research lab which I'm working on, NAAMII, it is actually producing the world-class research and technologies that has been not only explored in Nepal but also globally, alongside publishing in high-end papers like NURIPS and CBPR. And we have all been doing that by staying here in Nepal. So that's a possibility for creating an industry and actually maintaining the quality of global excellence. But what could be the challenges? The first one is the cost of technology. Like most of the aids which we saw previously in the video, they're pretty expensive for the people to buy. Like in the South Asian economy, there are many, the financial condition of the most of the disabled people here, that's quite, they're facing a lot of challenges financially. So affording such kind of technology might be a challenge for them. The second one could be the compatibility issue, which generally means like, adapting to a new technology or adapting to a different set of life, but sudden like bringing something different to a life, it's hard. And right amount of counseling, right amount of practice, and right amount of guidance is really important, which I find is lacking even in the current scenario where the companies or organizations which are actually working to rehabilitate those people, there is still lacking those that kind of motivation and training. That could be one of another issue. Customization and personalization. Every individual is different. Like even if two individuals are facing the same kind of different disability, the aid that is working for me might not be comfortable for another person. So that is, I think, like that is the foremost challenge in while expanding it as an industry, because developing individual aids for each and everyone uniquely, that is something we really need to think of. Data availability, like I've been running around for collecting the data for Nepalese Sign Language translation for nearly half a year, and it's been so hectic and tough to collect the data. Like the speaker previous from me mentioned, like the data that is working in US or other countries might not work in Nepal. And the case with my research, the sign language translation, is that every country has its own variations. Nepalese Sign Language is different. Indian Sign Language, somehow same but different. American Sign Language is totally different. So if I'm planning to work on developing the aid for Nepalese Sign Language translation, I need the data specifically developed by the National Deaf Federation of Nepal, or that is being used in Nepal. So that is another challenge. Another could be the data privacy and security content. I think my previous speaker has explained it pretty well, so I won't go in depth with this. Limited R&D funding. Yes, there is very low to less funding for such projects. I don't think I should say that more. And the fragmented market is, you see, like even when we, for the companies, the examples that I gave, all the companies that are working on a specific technology, like some are working for the deaf and blind, some are working for the physically impaired. So that has fragmented the industry a lot. That is a good thing in some part, but I think there should be a governing, or there should be a united forefront for solving this problem as together, instead of just being fragmented and distributed all over the country. So being fragmented takes a lot of resources, and it's quite hard to even track what kind of innovation is being doing on. So I think these are some of the few challenges that might be stopping us from exploring this as an industry, but I believe we should really start that. Now I'll be sharing a few points about the research which I've been currently doing. This is the data which I previously shared about how many numbers of people are facing this hearing and speaking impaired, what is the population, and what is the work. So what's our plan? So our plan is to develop an inclusive real-time sign language communication platform that can work as an intermediate between the sign gesture user and the normal speaker. So the future, the product or the solution that I'm visualizing is a easily accessible platform in which a sign language user can simply go and make the gestures, which will be translated to audio in the real time for the person staying in front to understand, and vice versa. If I'm sharing with you, it can be simply translated using the ASR into the text or the gestures for the sign language user. So if it is being done in the real time, then I think that can be really a big helpful aid for the people, because learning sign language is like learning a new language. There are nearly 5,000 gestures in Nepalese Sign Language alone. And it's not really feasible financially and practically to carry an interpreter always all around us. So developing such platform, I believe, can really help to solve the problem somehow, but for the Nepalese Sign Language users, which can be gradually expanded to other countries and other different variations of sign language. And starting from this, we can gradually switch on. So that's a long-term vision, to develop an organization, AI for differently abled, which can actually create and establish the Nepalese industry for the differently able people. So by far, for the industrial scope, currently our idea is being researched and incubated at NAAMII. Aside from that, the talk for the grant is going on with the National Deaf Federation of Nepal and World Federation of the Deaf. After we're able to develop a tentative model, our clients could be the mainstream medias. I think you remember, still the Nepal television gives the sign language gestures in the below of the caption. The problem there is, it's not real time, and sometimes like that's having a person stand by every time for the recording. So we need to work on that. Aside from that, we can work using the local authorities. I can simply go, like imagine I am a deaf and hearing and speaking impaired. I'm going into one of the local bodies, and I can simply interact in the camera, and the cashier or someone who is at the reception can understand what I'm saying. And also I'll be able to understand what they are saying. So that could really create a comfort. Aside from that, educational institution, NGOs and event house and the public services, those will be our possible clients. And gradually, we're also planning to go on our own product line, like the smart glasses and the premium features. And if we are able to produce something that's really valuable, that might even go patented. So by far, talking about the progress, we have published a paper in the ICT-CEL conference in 2023 as finger spelling gesture recognition for Nepalese Sign Language translation using hybrid classical quantum deep learning model. So this work was done in the sign language recognition. So there are generally two variations. If we go into the Google Scholar and search for the sign language, you'll generally find two types of works being done. One would be on the sign language translation, and another would be on the sign language recognition. So these two things are pretty different. So if you are talking about the sign language recognition, it's an object detection program. It's object detection work. It's just simply saying where the gestures, the camera and the algorithms are made to accurately detect the gestures that are broken into the words or individual sentences. But since we're talking about real-time communication, this system might not always work on simply detecting the gestures, because other factors like the tone of your voice, your expression, the grammar, there are a lot of things involved, because we're simply talking about translating one form of language to another, like English is being translated to Spanish, like Nepali being translated to other language. So sign language is also a language itself. So a simple sign language recognition might not work for that. So we need to enter into the sign language translation. Aside from that, we have created a 4 class of gesture data set. I think this is the first data set of Nepali Sign Language recognition, which contains the 4 gestures, Namaste, Dhanyavad, Ghar, and Ma, which we collected manually by going into the field, visiting those schools. It contains 3 two-handed gestures and 1 single-handed gestures. And there are 2 static, means the gesture in which hands are not moved, and 2 dynamic, where the hands are being moved. Then we have the 3500 train and 1000 validation and 500 test data set split. You can find this data set in Kaggle. It's publicly available. Aside from that, we were selected as the top 14 finalists for the ICT award this year. And right now we're working on the sign language recognition, in which we're targeting to collect 3000 hours of Nepalese sign language video, which is respective audio and the text, so that we can create gestures to audio and audio to gestures, a multi-way platform. So yes, I'd like to conclude the presentation by saying that Nepal can actually be one of the leading innovation hub in the assistive technology like AI, using AI, producing globally standard solutions. So whenever we talk, we really plan about the big plans, like visiting to Mars or creating a Dyson sphere. Those are important. Achieving artificial superintelligence or artificial general intelligence, those are important. But what about solving the problem of the current scenario? What about the people whose lives we can make better by actually developing such aids? We need to focus on that also. Both of the things are equally important, and I think it's time for us now to think like that. We need to focus on solving our existing problems. The Global South could be a good place to start, and think big but start acting small. So this was my presentation, ladies and gentlemen. You can connect me through my LinkedIn, and this is my email. And if there are any questions, yes, please.
So I want to ask.
Okay, backward as in economically, or?
Pretty much the community that need it, but do not have the economy.
Okay. So that in the part of as a government or as a part of our group? So
as part of any innovators or government.
Okay, so the thing is, if you're talking about the Western culture, the Western part of the world, there are a lot of work being done, because there's funding, and the researches, they are of pretty high end. The works are being done like there are nearly, I think, as per the data, there are nearly 50 to 60 companies per year that are actually working on the assistive technologies in that part. But if you're talking about this part of the world, the Global South, or if you're talking about the Eastern part, this problem is still very prevalent. Because generally, if you are able to establish an industry, then you cannot, one of the big challenges is the cost. Like, the technology should be made affordable, right? But for a company to make the product affordable, then that should have some back support or enough funding, so that the company can actually provide the product in comparatively cheaper value. So, but in case of Nepal, the big challenge is the funding. How it's really hard to get the funding and the back support. So even the aids that are being developed in Singapore and other countries, they are being expensive. So I think one of the big reason is the companies and other thing. If somehow the funding problem is being solved, the research is there. There are pretty big high-end research being done. But the thing is implementing those research. That is the challenge we're facing right now. So, and other thing we're try to solve is the part of the data. And the third one is it's really necessary for people to make them realize that their lives will be better by using our aids and as it was before. So that is also another part of challenge, to bring people into the loop.
Excellent presentation, a very promising product, right? So my question revolves around a situation. There was this company who used to sell addresses, specific addresses to many worldwide. They used to sell addresses, and what situation happened was there was a disaster and someone was trying to communicate that address to the police or something like that, right? But during the communication, the terminology used for the addressing came out wrong because of difficulty in pronunciation and everything. And that was a major issue because the relief that was to be provided in that certain area went to a different place because the address was communicated wrong. So since your technology translates and it actually communicates different information, if it does translate and the translation comes out wrong, who will be held the moral, who will take the moral responsibility of that issue? Like the wrong translation, will the company be held responsible or the person using the technology? That, I think that should be a clear agenda or a policy discussion in overall before proceeding it or launching it as a product, right? So what do you think will be the moral person behind that?
Well, I think that's a really good paradox that we've been facing a lot of like in this current time, not only with such translation technology, but also with the medical AI. Like it's a general question. If the AI that we're using for the medical treatment, if it does something wrong, who will be responsible, right? So it's the same, like sometime while communicating with the critical issues, if some person uses our platform and it disseminates wrong message, then that could be problematic. So I think one of the, like before deploying of the model, what we're trying to do is, the first thing that we're trying to make it, we're divided the types of the data that we're collecting into the multiple sectors. Like first we'll be targeting mostly for the school students, like the data that we'll be collecting will be primarily focused to ease the communication between students and the teacher. Then after some level of accuracy or the certainty is gained, then we'll be gradually then moving on to the what we like sexual reproductive and maternal health. Then we can gradually move on to the general communication. So we're planning to divide the modules, the data into the different parts, and then gradually only moving to the next step after the previous step is getting accurate. I think that is the part that we're planning right now to make our model as accurate as we can. But like talking about the response, I think that's generally more upon the community and the opinion of the people, like who will actually be responsible, whether it's the AI or if it's the person. So I think that time will tell that. I don't actually have the concrete answer to that question right now. While we're actually planning to collect the data for the Nepalese Sign Language recognition project. So in the first part, it was simple object recognition program, but while we're working, one of the main challenges that we felt was the detection of some of the gestures that are pretty similar to each other. For example, when we say Aza in sign language, it's like this, Aza. And when you say Mo, it's like this. When the data is being collected from the certain angle, like sometimes some of our model is simply detected it as being rotated. So that is a problem we felt while we're using the classical CNN models previously, like we tested with the VGC16 and ResNet 50. It was, I think, around 1 or 1.5 years back. Then one of our mentors, he suggested that he was at that time working on one of the quantum algorithm models using Penelin. I think it was angle variations model, in which generally the information or the features that are being extracted, that is stored in the form of the angle. And because of that, like the Aza and Mo, that could somehow be differentiated. And he said, why don't we go to this approach and let's see if the model performs okay. So because mainly we for that Aza and Mo gestures, there are a lot of being problem that we faced. So the quantum part that I mentioned, we simply implemented the quantum variational algorithm using Penelin platform. And when we trained the model, I think we got the result that was not exactly, the problem wasn't completely solved, but the performance was pretty improved. So that was the experimental part that we did when we were back in the college, and later it was published into the IEEE subsection paper, ICT CEEL. So that was the reason why we were choosing that algorithm.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
So the product you are using, you are developing is, as you said, it will be first used for students. I have some few questions like, what's the accuracy for this model? And another is, how will you use it in school? Like if I have to communicate with teachers, I can use it in real time by person to person. And how will this model use in transforming to student and teacher in real time? If there is, let's see the one worst scenario, if there is a problem in my camera, like I have some glitch in camera, it will be accurate in that model too or something?
Okay, thank you for the question. The first part, I think that you asked is what is the accuracy of the model, right?
Yeah.
So for that part, I can only tell you how the model is performing after we'll be able to complete the data collection. Right now, as I mentioned, we're in the data collection phase. For the second part is like there is a really specific law or the policy in the Nepalese education system that says all types of students, whether they are disabled or they are normal, they should all coexist and study in the same classroom. So that's the policy that's very clearly and precisely written in the Nepalese education, but that has not been implemented. So how we can do that is like for your problem saying like the camera angle and positioning, that will be totally depend on how we collect the data in the initial phases. So when we're collecting the data, that the camera won't simply stand in front, we'll be using the multiple angles and the gestures. So that will hopefully improve the angle, different angle variations. The another thing is like as a teacher, since if I'm speaking to you right now, the screen can actually show me, transcribe what I'm saying into the text or the sign language animated gestures, so that the student who can even hear, they can understand what I'm trying to say, the first part. And if I'm talking about how I'm communicating with my teacher, so in that part, generally that's a really tricky part, but I think using mobile devices or using some kind of laptop or some kind of aid for the students in the classrooms in the table, so that they can make the gestures and that can be transcribed into the audio, that could be a portable option. So there are lots of things that challenge that needs to be explored, but I think these two are the solutions that I have in my mind right now. Thank you so much for being such a kind audience, and I'll take the leave. Thank you so much. Yeah.